The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Good morning and welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen, and look who's here.
Good morning, Shannon.
It's Dr. Granpeesheh. She's back and we're so thrilled to have her back. We missed her so much. You know, we always say that we need to be able to allow her to be other places when she has to be other places, but there's nothing better than when she comes back because she's a true expert in the field of autism and she's a wonderful human being and she cares about you and your kiddos and your family members. And she has more knowledge about this than any 8 people I know. And I mean that sincerely. I sent you a text a week and a half ago because I was coming back from a conference. And I always love to be around other people and hear what other people have to say, but it always makes me appreciate how brilliant you are, man. It just brings it all home to me. And I go, whoo, I got so lucky because I'm with the mothership. You're the mothership.
You're so kind. Thank you. You were at the Calava conference, right?
I was, and it was amazing. And there were amazing people there, but I also always, I just get this thing when I'm talking to other people and I realize how amazing your knowledge is and how much I want to be a part of spreading your knowledge to more people because you have a message that is so clear and is so on point about the humanity of people on the spectrum and how their needs need to be met. And I found myself saying to people all the time, well, my mentor, Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, says it has to be fair. Mm-hmm. And just seeing how much that needs to be said to people, and that it's like a perfect guideline. So anyway, I had so much love for you while I was there. I was like, wow, you know how when you think somebody is incredible and then you go someplace and then you realize, oh, they're that incredible. You're that incredible.
You're so kind. Thank you.
No. So grateful. Anyway, so welcome to the Love Fest, you guys. If you don't know Dr. Granpeesheh, I'm so glad that you're here. And she is, as I said, a true expert in the field of autism, having been working in this field for over, get this, 40 years. I know she stepped out of the womb and went right to work. Must have been, right? But it's true. She's been working in this field for over 40 years. I don't think there's anyone who believes stronger in the rights of individuals who are on the autism spectrum and their right to be treated as individuals, and really gets that every family has its own need and is its own pod. We just really adore her as a visionary in this field. So she donates this hour for you guys to ask questions. We've opened up the forums. Amanda has already sent us her blue hearts, and Ria has said good morning to her as well. We're live right now on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and about a dozen other sites. Traven is going to start to show those to you on the screen if you're watching the video. If you might be watching or listening to us in podcasts, we are the #1 rated autism podcast worldwide for the 2nd year in a row. Woohoo! And that is really because of you guys, because you like us, you share us, you let other people in your community know when you find something worthwhile here. So we're going to ask you to keep doing that. But in particular, I've said this many times, but we love when you give us a review on iTunes, because I don't know why, but in the algorithm, that helps us to get to more people so that more people can ask questions here. So if you want to help out, if you're asking yourself, what can I do? We're not asking you to send any coinage in. We know you've got other things to spend your money on, but please help us to get to more people. That helps us keep the lights on. So, and I'm just excited to be here. We also have to give the disclaimer that even though Dr. Granpeesheh, I believe, is the preeminent expert in the field of autism in any time, not just our time, there is no expert that can give individual specific advice in this format. That wouldn't be fair to the individual. Come on. So what we ask is that you write in, be as specific as possible. We will ask as many of your questions as we can of Dr. Granpeesheh. Some of them we might be referring over to her TikTok channel, because you could be watching Ask Dr. Doreen on TikTok, which, can I tell you how many people were telling me at the conference, oh my gosh, we're watching Dr. Granpeesheh on TikTok. And I was like, there you go. So it's a great way. There's like an instant gratification kind of thing going on over on TikTok. So some of these questions we will be referring over there. We want you to check that out. But keep in mind, be as specific as possible, but she will have to be general in nature, and she may have more questions for you, but she has to be general in nature because she doesn't have the ability to have eyes on the individual. Alicia says, Buenos dias, Shannon and Dr. Doreen, my favorite people on the planet. Likewise, mwah, we are loving you. Okay, can we wade in, Dr. Granpeesheh, or do you have anything you would like to add?
No, we can get started, and thank you, everyone. And it's lovely to be back and looking forward to hearing some questions.
Yeah, and we have some questions that came in over the last few days on our website, which we have 2 different websites that we're on right now. You can catch us. We really want you to be going to autismnetwork.com. That's the new website. That's where you're going to find everything, and you're going to find the new stuff. That website is growing. It's not fully fleshed out yet, but there's everything you need right now is there. You can click on the Autism Live tab and be watching us live. You can go on that tab and you can write in on the chat, which is what we're talking about. But you can also check out all the other things that you need to be finding there, including there's a whole thing for Ask Dr. Doreen, which is fabulous. So we always start with questions that come in from that. And I'm gonna start with the toughie. I'm just gonna go there. I love when we started this show, one of the things that you said to me, Dr. Granpeesheh, was, I think it would be great, Shannon, if we created a space where parents could be honest, where they could say all the things that they need to say, because sometimes parents feel guilty about what they're feeling. And I love that we have people who, and so we're just going to come to this question with absolutely no judgment, because I think everybody has been in some version of this, but it's a long one and I'm going to cut through some of it. But they say, I've never posted, but it's getting so hard for me to deal with my son. And they said, I guess I'm just here to vent, and sorry that it's a jumble. But essentially, this is a mama, 2 special needs kids. She's got a daughter who has a chromosomal abnormality, and so that's hard. But now she also has a son who is on the spectrum. She says that he's scheduled to be diagnosed, but she's pretty sure that he is on the spectrum. He has a few stims that he does when he's excited or mad. He gets frustrated so easily, has meltdowns, avoids eye contact, likes to smash his face into us when he's mad. He has trouble with transitions. He is verbal but does not communicate. She says, I could go on. He had an IEP when he was 3 years old that stated that that it was developmental delay. He's been in a blended classroom, but he is eloping from that classroom. And when he elopes from that classroom, he goes to the cluster classroom, which they're now saying they would like to move him there. And she's okay with that because that seems to be where he wants to be. They say that on the plus side, he has a great memory and that he's very intelligent. However, he won't engage or focus. It's the same at home. He does get weekly speech therapy and OT, but she says, I am triggered by seeing other families with typical children. And truthfully, I am jealous. I cry every day. I also have the daughter with a rare genetic disorder. She says it hurts so badly to not be able to communicate with your child. I want to know what he's thinking or what he did at school. He just blurts out random lines from his TV shows or favorite songs. I want to know what he wants to eat for breakfast. She says we do give him choices, but mostly he just repeats the last thing we say. She says, I try to play with him, but he just wants to play by himself. I feel like we are existing in this house next to each other and not really connecting or engaging with other, and it makes me so sad. She goes on to tell a story about one day when she was at a park and a little boy came up to her and asked her to push him on the swing. She says, he talked to me. He seemed to really love it. And we laughed and we actually had a conversation. And then he asked me why my son wouldn't talk to him or play. She says, it really broke my heart because this is the connection that I want and the moments that I want to share with my son, and he doesn't seem to want to. And then I feel guilt for comparing and wishing and hoping he could be something I know he isn't. She wants to know, does it get better? Will he speak in complete sentences? How do I exist without being miserable? Will we ever be able to do things as a family like going to a pumpkin patch or going to an indoor play area or meeting Santa, etc.? She references that they went to a pumpkin patch and that it was a complete disaster. She says, I feel so much guilt for not being happy with the children I have. I often wonder if it's karma or maybe I was never supposed to have kids. She said, I feel like the depression is ruining everything, my marriage, my connection with my kids. But lately, I just wanted to walk away rather than keep trying to engage.
Yeah.
She says,
Oh my God.
yeah, she says it's hard to make friends as I'm triggered when I see their neurotypical children. My two special needs kids are not really interested in each other and it breaks my heart. This is not what I pictured. I guess my heart breaks every time I see other normal people and I grieve the life that I know we will not have. Thanks for listening. I really hope this gets better because I don't know how to do this for 10 years down the road. I think we can all relate on some level. We may not have two kids in this way, but I just want to hug this mom. And already people are saying I could have written that 10 years ago, and hugs to her. Thank you, Amanda, for saying that. Renee says, wow, I can relate. Everybody's saying it gets better. But Dr. Granpeesheh, woo, we're like hitting it right on the nerve here, right?
Yeah, my heart just goes out to this mom and all the moms who are relating to this. This is not easy. I mean, she wrote what a lot of people feel, and a lot of times I think we don't express all of the anguish, right? The anxiety, the fears, the guilt, the jealousy, all of that, right? And it all boils down, I guess, to sort of the question, why me, right? Like, why do I have to encounter this? And I have to tell you, I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh, here are the beautiful sides of it. There are some sides that are beautiful that other parents of typically developing kids often don't experience every milestone because life is going by so fast. And with our kids, we do, right? Like the first time he or she says something, the first time this, the first time that, things have slowed down. And so we get to actually see them and appreciate them in a different way, right? But I guess the one message that I want to give is to try and look at a different side of this, which goes back to kind of, Shannon, the why me. And the why me has to do with your strength and your ability and your, it's a special parent, it's a special person who can take care of a child with special needs, who can care for children who need special care. And if not you, who? Do you recognize the amazingness of you in taking care of these kids? Do you realize that you are one of an elite group that can handle this hardship, can handle this burden, I'll say, or can handle these anxieties and guilt and all of this sort of stuff, right? And you have been, and you are, and if you can, I think, start looking at, I guess, how special you are that you have been given this responsibility, as opposed to, I can't handle this responsibility, which I know how many parents feel that way. But what I'm saying is you have handled it. You are handling it.
Yeah.
And every moment that goes by, you're taking care of two special needs kids. We talk about parents who adopt special needs kids. We both know parents who have
Yes.
adopted special needs kids. And I think it's the same level of just awe I have towards parents who are given two special needs kids, and they continue to take care of them, and they continue to get up every morning and dedicate their own lives to the care of these children. You have every right to write to us and just empty out all the pain, and you should maybe do that more often. I mean, I really recommend that you don't try to, I guess, I mean, I don't think that as parents of special needs kids, I don't think we should be trying to fit in to, parents of neurotypical kids, because they're experiencing different things. But there's a whole universe of parents of special needs kids who would welcome you, understand you, support you, give you love, give you understanding. And that's where I think you should be, because that is the support that you need, right, Shannon? That's where you will get a lot of the feeling of, I'm going to survive this, and I'm going to thrive, and I'm going to make a big difference in the world.
Yeah. Dr. Granpeesheh, that I I call it a comedy show, although there's some very, very serious moments in it, called the Autism Monologues. And in the end of it, there's a monologue that I call The Bridge. And it was something that I wrote a while back when I'd gotten through the first 17 hoops, right? And I said, people don't understand what this is, but I think that being on this path is a lot like being shoved onto a bridge. You didn't choose it, but you were like moving along and somebody just shoved you on the bridge and you can't get back to the land. And you find yourself on the bridge looking around going, wait a second, how did I get here? I didn't choose this. This is a poop sandwich. I'm not even I don't have a backpack for this. I don't know how to deal with this. And you're told to just start walking on the bridge. It's really scary. And you cannot help looking back and seeing all the people on the land and going, why isn't that my life? Why are we here I don't think there's a way to stop yourself from doing it. But I will say that you're in the hardest phase of it. Honestly, everyone will tell you that, because you're in the phase where you haven't found the thing that's going to help you yet.
Yeah.
You're in the phase where you're about to have your child be diagnosed. You've identified that there's an issue, that there's a difference, but you're not at the help. And I think if you start walking in the direction of help, the thing that I say in the monologue is that eventually you start looking around on the bridge and see that other people are making it work. And then the question starts to become, how are they that? I'm not managing. How are they managing? So you start following them. And I will tell you not to, Nancy calls this farting rainbows. So I don't want to fart a rainbow on you, but I will tell you that when you start moving in that direction, what you're going to find, all these people that are writing in right now and saying it does get better and we're here for you and we're sending hugs, you're going to find the most amazing, I'm getting goosebumps. You're going to find the most amazing people you will ever meet in your life.
That's
the
true.
Other parents and their kiddos. No joke. These are the best people on the face of the planet. And you're going to start to recognize these people as your friends.
So true.
And eventually you stop looking back at the land because you realize that's not where we are.
Yep.
And you start to acknowledge, okay, we're on the bridge and we're finding the things that have it make sense for us. And the equation is different for everybody, but there is hope. It does get better. And when you prioritize what are the things that you want to be able to do, and find the right people to help. Because if what you want is to be able to go to a pumpkin patch, I can guarantee you There is a way for you to go to a pumpkin patch. It may mean you take 3 extra people with you, but you can have a glorious time. There's even a part of my comedy show where I talk about how we got kicked out of the family fun fair, pumpkin patch, the fall festival, because my kid couldn't handle it, and that I slunk away in shame, feeling like, oh well, I guess we can't go to these places. That isn't where we ended up, and it's not where you need to end up. But we need to get you on the road to better days. That's going to start with getting this diagnosis and then getting you on the road to help and support.
Yeah. That's all really, really well said, Shannon. And of course, those of you who have experienced it personally can reach out and help other parents who are going through this early stage of it. I remember, I want to just, I've shared the lives of so many parents over the course of the years that I just remember, and I think that is, I've always said this to you, it's like, people ask me, why did I stay in the field of autism? I mean, it's now like 44 years that I'm in the field of autism, and I always go back, and I always loved the kids that I met, but it was always the moms that was the thing that kept me in the field, was because I had so many moms who were just completely and it's to this day, like when I diagnose a family at the very beginning, it's a very devastating and scary diagnosis. It's a lot better now than it was 40 years ago, because there's a society that you can belong to, right? There's a group and people understand more, and there's some level of better acceptance and better awareness. But nevertheless, I remember I was very young, and I used to go to help this family, and I used to go to their home. This is when I was still at UCLA. And I remember I was probably at this point in my 20s, right? I was in my doctoral program, and I remember seeing all over the house, the mom had put signs, little messages to herself.
Mm-hmm.
There were little cards, just like index cards, that she had written, "You'll be okay. This will pass. You'll be okay." And I just want to say, and at that time, I didn't understand the gravity of that. Like, how important was it? And what was she going through that she needed that? How fragile of a time it was for her that she was going through that. And of course, I know that mom now, and she's, a powerhouse. And I will say, her child did not recover or, go to do the things that she always imagined her child would. But in the meanwhile, on the journey, she became stronger and stronger. And I think one of the things that I learned from that mom is that she started reaching out and helping others, and helping those that were behind her in the journey. And that made her, just gave her such an incredible sense of belonging, and also just a sense of, like, this was my journey. This is where I was meant to be. This is what I was supposed to do. And then her I guess her feeling about herself stopped being defined by how her son was doing, and it became more about, this is my role in life. And I know that I know a lot of parents who have found their roles in life later. So be strong, and just, you are strong, and just keep going. And as Shannon said, know that things actually do get a lot easier. No matter what, the very first stage is definitely the hardest.
Yeah.
So get the diagnosis and move forward with it, because a lot of parents who get the diagnosis, I do talk to them for a long, long time about, what does this diagnosis mean to you? And sometimes parents think the diagnosis is a horrible lifelong thing, and it's not. It's just a label that tells you some of the things that you'll need to work on with your child. So get the diagnosis, move forward, and we're here for you. And if you ever
Yes.
need to come back and write, we are here and happy to talk to you and happy to help you.
Absolutely. And you can see that in the chat, many people are writing in and saying, if you want to reach out to them. I will tell you, you don't know it right now and you don't feel it right now, but you are in a lot of people's arms right now. People are thinking of you and holding on to you, and we're here for you. Please feel free to write to any of us. I do want to acknowledge, and I want to say hello to Humera, who has written in and said, autism is neurodiversity. Then why is it treated as a behavior problem? And I think this is a great question, and I'm glad that you brought it up, because I think we get a little confused here between that a diagnosis of an autism spectrum disorder and when we see behavior that is not helping the person to achieve their goals. So help us, Dr. Granpeesheh, to understand.
It's such a great question, Humera. It's such a deep question, I feel, because it's, for someone like myself who's been in the field long before it was an issue of neurodiversity, long before it was accepted, let's put it that way. This question is easy for me to answer, but I can see when someone who has entered the world of autism now, and there's two sides, right? There are people who say this is neurodiversity and let's accept it. And then there are other people who say, no, we can't accept this. And it's funny, Shannon, this past week, I just did a video on for my TikTok, which is probably going to be posted this week, which was about this issue of, do I just accept it and move forward, or do I try to change it? And I think that's what the core of this is. And I want to say, I want to give our viewers two thoughts about this. And one is, so first of all, we have a manual called the Diagnostic, mine happens to be right here, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Is this massive book, and it changes every few years, but autism is in there, obviously. And in order to qualify to be in there, in other words, in order to be classified as a disorder, you can't just have symptoms of something. Those symptoms must take away from your day-to-day life. There's a whole section in the beginning of this book that talks about what is classified as a disorder. I mean, I'll give you an example. The example I always use is, someone who goes home and drinks every single day and drinks 2 bottles of scotch, it doesn't matter. As long as they're going to work, having a productive work life, their husband or wife and children are feeling good, and everything at home is fine, and they have a adaptive home and social life and all of that, it cannot be called alcoholism or alcohol dependence or alcohol addiction. It just cannot. It's not considered a disorder unless it is specifically taking away from the quality of life. And that's a really important thing to start with when we talk about autism, because, there are individuals, and I see there are questions coming up also about adults who are now diagnosed with autism. There are individuals who are diagnosed with autism who actually are, I guess, how do I want to word this? Who have they benefit from some of those strengths that come with a diagnosis of autism. For example, they have an incredible memory, or they have an unbelievable ability with numbers, or they have an incredible ability with visual features of things in their environment. And those are wonderful. And the things that, the downsides of autism, let's say not being able to socialize or communicate properly, all that sort of stuff, is not as severe in those individuals, and they thrive. And they have the diagnosis, but they're thriving, and they're really enjoying life and benefiting from all of it and just having a great time, even though they're quite different, right? Yeah. On the other hand, there's individuals who it's the other way around. the symptoms of autism that they have prevent them from having an adaptive, happy, fulfilling life. They're not thriving. They have, on the higher level, I'll say they have social anxiety, which prevents them from interacting. On the more severe level, they can't communicate their needs. They can't socialize. They can't go out in public. They have so many skills they're lacking, right? So it really has to do with the experience of the individual. An individual might say, I have autism, but I'm perfectly fine. I'm thriving. I'm enjoying life. All is good. And that individual does not need to change. As long as you're doing great and you're enjoying your life and everybody around you is happy and all that sort of stuff, wonderful. But there are individuals who are struggling with their diagnosis of whatever it might be, autism, alcoholism, anxiety, you name it, whatever their diagnosis might be. And if you're struggling, then obviously you want change. Then obviously you're seeking out help in order to strengthen yourself, overcome those weaknesses, and be able to thrive, right? It's all about enjoying life and thriving in life. So now in society, just to go back to this question, when we have individuals whose issues, whose symptoms and issues infringe upon others in society and make life harder for others in society, then it isn't just an issue of neurodiversity. There's a level of acceptance, right? But there's a limit as well. For example, I do training, Shannon, for organizations, large organizations that like Oracle, these companies where they want to make some change in their environment so that those with autism can work there and feel fulfilled. And, they want to make some modifications. Great. So they will make modifications. There are things like the individual with autism will have a mentor that they can check in with every day. The individual will, their seat will be in an area where it's not too noisy or too disturbing. So, and certain modifications are perfectly fine. But if the individual with autism walks over to their neighboring employee and hits them every single day, then that's not okay. Then that's not something that can just be excused by saying autism is an issue of neurodiversity, right? So there are limits to what society and other people are willing to accept. And that's when it goes from being just an issue of neurodiversity to an issue of behavior, right? And that's when we need to really look at the issue and say, okay, I'm going to help you overcome or modify or replace this particular behavior because it is now infringing on the rights of someone else, whether that be your next door neighbor, your employer, your employee, another employee, a parent, a sibling, you name, or another child in school. It's always about sort of like, as you say, Shannon, I love saying we got to make it fair for our kids. We also have to make it fair for other kids and other people around our kids.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of where it's at.
Absolutely. I love that way of looking at it. I'm saying hello to Huma, who is writing to us from Pakistan. I want to address I'm all out of order here, but I love this question, and it goes right to what we're having this time of year. Renee and Elvira say, I have a very specific question. Every allergy season, my son gets super sick, and he doesn't know how to blow his nose. Any tips? She does say, I've tried to teach him with a tissue in front of him and have him blow it with his mouth and then with his nose. He has no clue what I'm asking. Hugging you. This is hard.
So, Elvira, I think you might have been the one that I answered on my TikTok, actually. I'm just, I think yesterday or today, going to post that response. But it is that 3-step thing where the way that, and you can model it. If he has no idea what you're trying to tell him, model it. And essentially what you're doing is you will hold a tissue in front of him, right? And you will just play a game that's like blow. And you'll show him. And if he doesn't know how to blow, so blow like that, right? And if he doesn't know that step, then you're going to go back to another thing, which is those like party favors, for example, or a candle, or things that visually will actually go out or change when he blows, right? Because you really want to get him to understand the instruction blow. And when he does like that, that's wonderful. Now the next step, so that's your first step. Your next step is trying to get him to blow with his nose, which is like that, right? And if he's having a hard time understanding that, then just hold your hand in front of his mouth when you tell him to blow, and again, model it. Maybe hold his hand in front of your nose, so he sees that you can still produce that kind of air out of your nose. And that is step 2, which is getting just to blow out of your nose. And that's when you then will hold the tissue closer, and now he's blowing out of his nose, and then you can actually wipe his nose. Now, I know I made it sound really easy, and sometimes it just doesn't work for our kids out for whatever reason. And I hate to say it, but the only other alternative is they do sell, they're like little suction bulbs that we use when they're babies, right? And what you would do is you would put saline in his nose first, and then you would suction it out, so that is helping with the allergies. But a lot of times when you actually go and see an allergist about allergies, seasonal allergies, they'll tell you that your child needs to get on an antihistamine or some sort of medication that's going to help them not have a runny nose the whole time. It's funny that this is the season. My husband is one of those people, and
Mine
every
too.
morning he wakes up with sneezing, and it's a very tough period of time for our kids. So take your time with this. It is, kind of one step at a time, lots of reinforcers in between each stage, and just focus on each stage. You're not going to do all 3 stages in one sitting. You're just going to focus on stage 1 for like a few days until he's really good at it. Then you're going to go to stage 2 and then stage 3, like that.
Amazing. Sarah wants to know, hi, Dr. Doreen, what is the correlation between hyperlexia and autism? Is it a predictor of functioning level?
So I'll give you an anecdotal answer to that. So yeah, I do have a lot of kids who have, or some kids who have hyperlexia, and that, for our viewers, hyperlexia is when children, they have a amazing ability with letters, and they can read earlier than other children. I mean, I have children who have taught themselves at the age of 2 how to read, and I'm like, oh my God, so they are very advanced in the ability to read words. That doesn't mean to understand words, but to read words, right? So I want to say that anecdotally, and I don't think there's any published literature on this, but from my personal experience, a child who has hyperlexia usually gets me pretty excited, because they have a certain organization in their brain that makes it easier to teach them a lot of things. So in that sense, they tend to go faster through their lessons and programming. And, like, I don't want to confuse people. I want to talk for a minute, Shannon, about like the way that I do ABA, which is a little bit different than typical ABA, I think.
Yeah.
So, the way that I look at it, ABA is not just a series of, it's 2 different things. One is like a series of techniques that we use to help manage behavior. So challenging behaviors is kind of like a series of techniques where we communicate to the child what behaviors are accepted and others that are not acceptable, and how they should modify their behaviors and make them more adaptive. So that's one section of it. The other section of it is a whole different series of protocols and methods that we use just for teaching new skills. And so that's, to me, the bigger portion of ABA, which is because there's hundreds of skills where our kids fall behind, right? So it's like, whether they're 3 years old when they're diagnosed, or 4, or whatever it is, there's a few years of early development that they were not paying attention, were not able to learn the way other children learn. So now they've fallen behind. And Shannon, I'm just going to answer, because there was an earlier question I saw that came in that said something about, my child being diagnosed and they're I think they're like functioning at an 18-month-old when the child is actually 2.5 years old, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm going to throw that in here as well. So, there's two ages: chronological age, which is our own age, like the age that you have, and mental age, which is the age of your brain functioning. So usually your chronological age and your mental age are the same. So you are, let's say, 5 years old, and your mental age is that of a 5-year-old. And that's how you calculate IQ, intelligence quotient. IQ is is mental age divided by chronological age times 100. And that's how it's 1/1, right? Times 100. So it's 100. Normal IQ is 100. So basically, with our kids, because they are aging, their chronological age is getting more higher, but their mental age is slower because it's so distracted and it's not learning. It's almost like, they're in a foreign world. They don't understand things fast enough, so they're losing time. So what happens is obviously their mental age falls behind. So as their mental age falls behind, this is often a very shocking thing for parents to be told, oh, he's functioning like a 2-year-old. But that doesn't mean that he will always be functioning as a 2-year-old. That's the whole purpose of intensive therapies like ABA, is that as time is going on, as chronological age is moving forward, now we're going to use these incredibly intensive therapies to double up and teach the child what they didn't catch up with, what they fell behind on. So now, in a span as he goes from age 4 to 5, I'm actually going to teach him 2 years worth of stuff so that, he's catching up. So his mental age will now go faster than time, which is chronological age, and then he will catch up. So those things all happen with therapy. And I totally forgot where I started, Shannon.
We started with the hyperlexia.
Right.
Yes.
And the kids who have hyperlexia, it ends up going a little faster just because we can use the written word as a prompt in teaching. So a lot of times kids with hyperlexia will just master all the things they have to learn a little bit faster, which obviously helps them catch up.
So I want to ask a question and tie it in with Gareth wrote in and said a lot about how his brain works and how it's constantly running and how it's like a computer. I'm paraphrasing, and forgive me, Gareth, but you wrote this beautiful, beautiful section about sometimes people don't understand the strength of the brain with autism. That he doesn't want to go into it too much, but that they don't understand how my brain is running at 1,000 miles an hour from waking to sleep, and sometimes in sleep because of the day. I can watch one thing and never forget it. And I think this, for me, this kind of goes along with because Sarah has written back and said, so do I need to take advantage of the hyperlexia? I know you said anecdotally that you get excited because individuals who have hyperlexia, the brain's going to move faster and you're going to be able to teach so many more things. But I have also seen anecdotally from my 16 years talking to parents that if you don't accommodate and give that brain that's hyperlexic things to focus on, that what I have heard from parents is that then it turns into perseveration and anxiety because they don't have enough to do. So I think that not only is it imperative that for those kiddos that we get them the right therapies, but that we give them enough to focus on. Am I at all in the ballpark, Dr. Granpeesheh?
Oh, totally, Shannon. There's no question that, and I hadn't thought about it in terms of just hyperlexia, but I agree with you that there's, any child, and if you just stop, kind of look at it from a different perspective, any child, I think, that has a propensity or a strength or a desire or wish or whatever, a need, it doesn't matter, like to do a specific type of behavior, or their brain is kind of craving something. And if you just let them be, they're going to try and find ways that will accommodate that need. And sometimes the ways that they find are not necessarily the most adaptive. So it is quite possible that they might find other things to do, like carrying a letter around and looking at it like this the whole time.
Yeah.
other things rather than using that particular skill to move forward. I mean, and by the way, I want to say hyperlexia is just kind of one of the this is what I love about autism, is that each of our kids have a different, you know, sensory ability. I don't want to compare it, but you know how sometimes when you lose one of your senses, and we talk about this with like people like Stevie Wonder, for instance, who have lost a specific sense, other senses become accentuated, and you develop in ways that neurotypical people do not, right? So like you look at musicians who have lost their sight, and their musical ability, their auditory ability is tremendous, like Ray Charles or Stevie Wonder or so on as examples, right? And there are many others. And with our kids, I find the same thing. Like there are certain areas where their senses are dulled, and then there are other areas where their senses are unbelievably advanced. So many of our kids have artistic abilities. So many of my kids are able to, and just reading what Gareth wrote here, or Garth, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. There are so many of our kids who will, for instance, see one thing one time and they have a 100% visual recall of it, or they will listen to a song and be able to immediately play it on a keyboard. I mean, these are not neurotypical things, right? These are incredible advanced abilities. And so you see that within our field as well, which is, yes, there might be an area where the child is behind, but there are significant other areas where often they're advanced.
But I think we've all arrived at and I love, Amanda wrote in and said that she experienced this with her son, that the hyperlexia can be both a curse and a gift, and that you have to be careful, and that she wished she'd handled it differently. And maybe, Amanda, if you want to share with Sarah some of the ways that you wish that you'd handled it differently. But I love what you said about all kids across the board. If we don't feed them that, and I'm talking about feed their brains, not just, and it's both the food and the things for them to do. We don't want to leave people to be bored.
Yeah.
We want to engage the brains and excite them in a positive way. So maybe write in and say that. Now, Sade has written in and said, any advice on how to stop licking? My child started this behavior, licking their hand and wiping the saliva all over their face. The behavior started with a series of colds and now continues, although they are well. They also like to use a wet washcloth as well, if not licking.
Yeah. I love that. Human behavior is so incredibly complicated. And initially we're like, okay, well, we just have to, prevent the child from licking and all that. But before I give you an intervention, I guess I'd like to learn more about this wet washcloth thing as well, because to me it appears, and like this is where if I knew your child, I'd be doing what's called a functional behavior assessment, so I could identify exactly what is the function of the behavior. Our kids will develop these little behaviors and we're always like, well, that's an odd behavior, I should get rid of it. But before you get rid of it, you kind of should find out what is the function of it. What is he trying to do with it? What is he replacing, or what other need is being met by this behavior? And so
we always say here, what's the paycheck? He's getting a paycheck for it. What's his paycheck? Let's not take away his paycheck.
Exactly. There's some reason that this started, and it could have been something like he had a cold. It could be so many different things. I'll give you a couple of ideas. So, he had a cold. From the cold, his nose became very dry, or his lips. And then he figured out that something like a wet washcloth or a saliva in that area will now remove the dryness feeling, and it feels better because it's not dry. That's one option. Another option is he had a cold and his nose was running, and you'd come up and wipe his nose a lot. So he got a lot of attention from you. And now he's thinking, maybe what I have to do is make my whole face wet so that I can get mom to come over again. Yeah. So we kind of have to figure out exactly sort of what led to the behavior. So maybe you can help me with that. How did it develop? What were the things that you saw coming up when he had the cold? And what in your behavior, what changed? So like when he had the cold, what started happening? Was he getting a lot more of your time? Is he getting a lot more of your time right now by doing this behavior? So what we're trying to figure out is, was it an avoidance type of behavior, a tangible? Is it access to something like the wet washcloth? Is it access to attention from you? Maybe you can give us a little bit more information.
Yeah, because ultimately, when we figure out what the paycheck is, then you can figure out what to put the replacement with.
Exactly.
I think that's the part that as parents, we don't always go, oh, that's why I need to know that. Because if it had a paycheck and I give it a replacement, we're not going to have some big push me, pull you trauma over it. We've met the child's needs. It's what's fair. It's what we started with, what's fair. But if you try to say, oh, you're doing that and you're doing it for a reason, now I want you to stop, good luck with that.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a good time with that.
Well, and you stop in different ways, right? It's like if it's, and I see that Chare's writing in again saying that he was having mucus from his nose, I think is what she's saying, and that she was cleaning it with a washcloth. But she has a feeling that it was a sensory seeking behavior. And there you go. And that in itself is very important. And if you feel that he has a sensory need, now she wrote back in, which is a whole different thing. She wrote back in and said, the paycheck I thought was me telling him to stop. So let's try to correct this and keep both of those things in mind, because so what you're saying is maybe part of it was that he was getting a kick from it because he was getting your attention. Negative attention is attention. It doesn't matter. So part of it is that. But then the other side you're saying is that he also enjoys the sensory aspect of it. So let's provide him the ability to have some sort of sensory thing going on, and let's remove you from the equation. Let's do both of those things. So, I'm just looking at exactly. So he has dry skin. So that's actually wonderful. And so one of the things that you can do is just stop telling him to do it or not do it. Let's just stop intervention, any kind of consequence from you when he does this. But let's put him on a schedule where he, I don't know, maybe depends on whether he's home or not, but at certain intervals, like every 2 hours, you just out of the blue, go over to him and take him to a mirror and put some lotion, show him how to put lotion, rub his hands and rub it on his face. So let's teach him to start putting an appropriate lotion, especially since he's also prone to eczema, on his face, and then to walk away from it. And then you go about just moving on. And the frequency at which you want to do that is basically, hopefully, something that's manageable throughout his day. Like a lot of people, my husband being one of them, also because he has these allergies, will have like a small lotion with him. He also used to have a ton of eczema from allergies. So he has it's just a habit now where he will put lotion and put it all over his dry spots. Let's start by doing that, and please track it and let us know if the other behavior, which was spit and running, starts to go down. Try not to get too involved with him when he is putting spit. What I would do, instead of saying don't do that or something like that, is I would just move his hand away and interact with him with some other type of activity. So basically distract him to something else, but don't verbally respond to him or consecrate it. And let's see if actually having moisture and having this sensory need met will now eliminate the other way that he was meeting his sensory need.
Okay, we have so many questions, but I really want to get right now to Jill wrote in and said, my son refuses to go in the bathtub. He is not afraid of water. ABA is doing a water protocol. He's afraid of the tub. Where do I start? He is so traumatized. My thing is jumping around here. And I can't see it now. I don't know why it's not moving. Okay. He's so traumatized from the last bath, which we had to wash hair. And I really appreciate this, Jill, because this is one of the things that came up a lot when I was at the CalABA the other day, is about trauma and trauma-informed care and how careful we need to be, because when kids are traumatized, and then we get in there and we aren't thinking about the trauma and try to do something, sometimes we can gum it up and make it worse, which was not our intention. But then where do you go from here? He's traumatized by the tub.
Yep. So trauma is really interesting. It's funny. I had this experience with my son when he was very little, and this is the kind of thing that happens when kids, in trauma and how it generalizes. He was probably about, I want to say 2.5 or something, and we were in Europe, and until that point of his life, he was living in California, where it doesn't rain. Just that simple. So he'd not had the experience of rain. So we go to Germany, and he was out playing with someone, and it started to rain and thunder, which is a very typical thing in Europe, in Germany. And my son was not familiar with that. And this person who was with him, an adult, was just trying to make it playful, and said, "Oh, thunder, we better run," and picked him up and started running home and brought him inside. And unfortunately, that experience became traumatic for him. He became terrified of thunder initially, which of course a lot of kids are afraid of as well. But then that turned into water because it was rain. And then that water that generalized to oceans or all bodies of water. He wouldn't go out. And then he started to be terrified of even the bathtub. Exactly the same situation here. Whereas before, he used to love taking a bath. And that even became worse, because then he started to kind of become agoraphobic in some ways, that he didn't want to go outside, even back in California, because he was afraid of the rain, right? And it was like, what will I do? So this reversing trauma is a thing that takes a long time. And so one of the things I had to do was literally, I had to take, the big one, when I realized that it has generalized a lot, was when we then sometime later were in Hawaii, and he just absolutely refused to go down to the ocean, right? Would just not go. And he had massive tantrums around it. And so for an entire week, I would stand where he was comfortable, a certain distance from the ocean, and I would do all kinds of activities. And the goal for that day was that we would go one step further closer, and that was it. And then we would throw a party there and spend the rest of the day there. And the next day we'd go 2 steps closer, and so on. And by the end of the week, I was able to get him to put his feet in the water, which was a big accomplishment. I had to do that when we got back home. I had to do the exact same thing with bathtub, which was, it's a shaping procedure. So it will take a while. It'll take a month. And initially, the bathtub is no longer going to be a place to wash him. Let's just be very clear about that. If you have another bathtub in the house, great. If you don't, you're going to have to, wash him with a wet washcloth until this procedure works. But what you're going to have to do is, I would make the bathtub a fun place. You can throw toys into it. You can just turn it into, get those, kids have those sprays that are color, and you can draw with it inside the bathtub, whatever. It's a fun place. It has nothing to do with water initially. If you start to do a few things there, perhaps he can wash his hands there, okay? That might be one way to start. And you will now gradually increase it over the course of the next couple of weeks, which is he's still playing, but he can sit on the edge of the bathtub and maybe stick his feet in the water, wash his feet. And then gradually the water can come up to his shins. And then now he's still playing. And then 3 days later, the water can come a little bit further up. And now you can fill the bathtub, but it's and put bubbles and everything in it. But he's not actually, he's just going to sit on the edge and he's going to play with a sailboat. Trauma takes a long time, and you will need to go at his pace, and you'll need to bring in a lot of rewards and a lot of distraction to be able to reverse that and to make him be okay with every phase of it. Now, some of it will be just he'll start getting scared. Don't necessarily back off, just give more support, give more distraction, give more reward for being able to stay there. But I'm not a big believer in flooding, which is kind of like forcing the child to go back to that traumatic event and just deal with it. So I like to recommend that you do these things very slowly and just kind of reverse and try to give the child a positive stimulus to associate it with.
Wonderful. And Jill wrote in and said, I'm glad I'm sort of on the right track using a baby pool for now.
Perfect.
And Amanda wrote in and reminded me about Glow Pals. Glow Pals are these amazing things that were invented by a mom whose son was having issues with the bath. They look like ice cubes, but they're different colors, and they only light up in water.
Yeah.
And you start with them in a glass of water that they can stick the Glow Pal in the glass of water, and they see that it lights up, and then you put it in a bowl, and then eventually you put it someplace else, and so that they want to use it in the bathtub. Love us some Glow Pals. They were in our toy guide a couple of years ago.
They're so good. Yeah.
Thank you. And I do want to say that for Amanda and Sarah, Sarah was asking the question about the hyperlexias. Sarah is watching on YouTube, and Amanda was answering with suggestions of what she would do on Facebook. Amanda, Sarah is asking to be connected to you. I don't know which one of you can go to which place. If Sarah, if you can get to Facebook and find Amanda, or Amanda, if you can get to YouTube and find Sarah. That way, maybe you guys, because you're talking on two different platforms, and I didn't realize that until just a couple of minutes ago. So, but I think probably you guys would be lifelong friends, I'm guessing. We're out of time, and I don't want to be out of time. We have a million more questions. In particular, there was a question from the mom who wrote it and said, my daughter was diagnosed with mild autism. The therapist said her language delay was due to autism and had nothing to do with cognitive impairment. He also said that she would catch up to her peers, and I shouldn't worry about it too much since her case is pretty mild. He did, however, recommend ABA therapy. And then when she went for the assessment, they told her that they were recommending 40 hours a week. She says, that's way higher than I assume my daughter would need since she has such a mild case. And they also told her that her daughter was at a level of 18 months. You answered that already. My daughter is 2.5. I really wasn't expecting this. And basically, mom says, I don't know how these two things mesh together. We're going to ask Dr. Granpeesheh in the next couple of days to answer that on TikTok, as well as some other questions that you guys have written in. There's some pretty weighty ones, but so there you go. Amanda found her on YouTube. Amanda, you're amazing. So thrilled. And Gareth, thank you for being here. We loved all of your input. Thank you all of you for being here. We loved all of your input. And check out Ask Dr. Doreen on TikTok. And you can also be asking your questions there and seeing them answered there. But thank you so much for being here. On tomorrow's show, we have Kristen Jacobson is going to be with us, and she might be bringing some friends with her. They are part of the September 24th project, Dr. Granpeesheh. As you know, our beloved Feda Al-Malidi and her son, Mu, died tragically in a house fire. And if you at all knew of any of Feda's work that she was doing, you would know that she would not be okay if her death didn't lead to more people being more safe with their children. So
Yes.
there's an amazing group of moms and therapists that have gotten together and created this project in honor of her and her work. And Kristen is going to be talking with us tomorrow about things that we can all do to help ourselves be safe in our home with our kids of all abilities. No matter how big the challenge, making sure that we can get them and ourselves to safety if there is a fire. It's a really important conversation. I hope you guys will join us here for that conversation. And then on Thursday, Nancy Allspaw Jackson will join me. We're going to cover some amazing news this week. So we're revving up for April. But Dr. Granpeesheh, oh, the love that we all have for you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Shanna.
We'll be back next week. Until then, everybody, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.